Welcome to the second part of Post-Election Iran, Press TV's special coverage on the events surrounding the country's 10th presidential poll. Fraud, the five-letter word that's become one big deal. Accusations, allegations and complaints have all been made against the legality of this election, while media, analysts and even politicians have been commenting on the issue. Here in Iran, the results of the election has people out on the streets in protests that have sometimes turned violent. Let's cross over to Mohammad Marandi, who's been out on the streets of Tehran to ask people what they think of the current situation.
Elections. The Guardian Council has yet to verify the election results. Groups of people have been protesting those results in various gatherings, which the Interior Ministry has called illegal. Join me, Mohammad Marandi, as I ask some Tehran residents what they think about the whole situation.
What happened in the streets was not a bad thing. They'd come to get their rights through their silence, but unfortunately it led to violence.
I think it was only an excuse. It was nothing to do with supporting a particular party, because a lot of people in the protests have not even voted. They are not old enough to vote. So this is only an excuse.
One of the reasons behind the protests is the economic pressure, the high inflation, the lies.
They take their lessons from the West, the US and Britain, and actually they aren't from among those who voted, but from among those that we call offenders.
I think they have to sit and talk rather than take to the streets and get caught up in clashes. This is wrong, and it will only make Europeans and others think that we are after violence. This is not right.
As an Iranian, I'm asking the Guardian Council to give the people the perfect truth.
They think the person they voted for has to become president. That's why people take to the streets, and some elements from outside the country have their own agenda and cause damaging events like these shootings and clashes. These elements were provoked from outside the country.
Well, the views of some Tehran residents there. Over the last few months, different organisations have released their predictions and findings on Iran's election results, but each report seems to have a different conclusion. Tonight, our debate asks, what can we take from these reports? And are the results right or rigged? I'd like to welcome our guest to tonight's debate. Dr. Ali Ansari joins us, Director of the Institute of Iranian Studies and a consultant to the British government. Also joining us is Dr. Kaveh Afrasiabi, who's a political analyst and author, and also a former UN consultant. And joining me here in the studio in Tehran, Dr. Mohammad Marandi, who's a professor at the University of Tehran and a critic of the current administration. I'd like to thank you all for being with us here on Press TV today. Dr. Ansari, I'd like to start with you. You've been one of the prominent figures on the international outlets on Iran's elections over the last few weeks as events unfold, especially since the last few days since the release of that Chatham House report. What are the main points that you have made, if you can wrap it up in a few moments?
Well, yes, let me try and summarise it very, very quickly. One is that it's a preliminary report. It's meant to introduce into the debate the basic figures that have been issued by the Ministry of Interior, comparing and contrasting the election result in 2005 with 2009. And we've taken a contrast of the first round in each case because this reflects the better dispersible of the voting pattern before we get into the second round, when we get into tactical voting. And of course we didn't have a second round in this case, of course. So the idea was to just put into facts and figures the nature of the swing that would have gone to Mr. Ahmadinejad to allow him to win the sort of victory that it is claimed for him. And we highlight a number of issues, that one of it being that his strength is not in the countryside. The voting patterns in the countryside do not indicate a strong principalist slant. They tend to be more reformist. but also those areas when there was a higher turnout than there are registered voters, for instance. So we were just looking at a number of anomalies and injecting that into the debate to say what sort of level of electoral swing would have been required for Mr. Ahmadinejad to have achieved the sort of landslide victory it is claimed for him. And in many cases, this is extremely large. Extremely large.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an impressive victory, we can say. So it's a question of others.
Let me come in if I can.
On the basis of these figures.
If I can come in there, if I can. So this is, you're saying it's a preliminary report. This is not, in fact, any proof that there has been fraud. It is just highlighting some issues, in fact, that we're going to discuss this evening. Is that correct?
That's right. We don't use the word fraud in the report at all.
OK. Another issue that I'd like you to clarify. Elections are a social and political issue. Can you analyse this social and political issue just through this issue of mathematics and facts and figures, pretty much linear approach?
No, not at all. And of course, I'm not a statistician. You know, you're talking to the wrong person as a statistician. What I've tried to bring to the debate, of course, is my own expertise in political and social development in Iran over the last 2 decades. So, and I mean, people can fault me for that and say that I'm completely wrong, but, you know, that's up to people's judgment.
I'd like to cross over to Dr. Afrasiabi at this point. What's your assessment of this Chatham House report, would you say?
Well, to start with what we heard from Mr. Dr. Ansari, I really think it's disingenuous on his part to say that he doesn't use the word fraud when he uses terms very close to that to cast doubt on the authenticity and the legitimacy of the election. You know, we have an authoritative study by University of Michigan Professor Walter Medane, who is a world authority on statistical analysis of voter frauds. Professor Medane has done the same comparison as Dr. Ansari, comparing the 2009 elections with the 2005 elections, and has reached exact opposite conclusions. His conclusion is, and I read, substantive core of posted results are in line with the basic statistical trends. In addition to Professor Medane, we also have a statistical guru, Nate Silver, who has done a statistical study and has reached the conclusion that the results are, and I'm quoting, valid based on statistical analysis. So you have to compare 2 statistical experts with Professor Ansari, who with his own admission a minute ago is not a statistician, and he relies on the work of others, paid employees of the British government, who is under serious question marks today for their meddling in Iran's internal affairs. So if you ask me, as a political scientist, I would go with the results and the findings of Professor Medane rather than Professor Ansari.
What a load of rubbish. What a load of rubbish.
You are
Kaveh
rubbish.
Afrasiabi, what a shame that you say that.
You have made incredible ass out of yourself,
You can't start saying that I'm
an
agent of the British government.
OK, let's come in at this point.
What a load of rubbish. Listen, either we're going to have a proper debate. If we're going to start hurling abuse at people, I'm going out.
This will be a proper debate.
If you want to have a proper debate...
Dr. Ali Ansari and Dr. Afrasiabi, I'm going to stop you both there because we do have another guest who I want to cross over to at this moment, Dr. Mohammad Marandi, who joins us in the studio. We're going to be debating the issues surrounding all these different authorities that are coming out. I'd like to cross over to Dr. Marandi right now. What are the other issues that could have affected it? One of the issues that have come out is that this question mark over fraud. What are the other issues that could have created this massive swing that we've seen in the last 4 years?
Well, there are a few things I'd like to point out, and